Hello, everyone, and welcome to Watching 100 Movies. I'm Christiana Ellis,
And I'm Mike Mateen.
and we are making our way through the AFI's top 100 movies. And we are tonight going to be discussing number 20, It's a Wonderful Life, and number 19, On the Waterfront. We've broken the top 20. It feels like a huge accomplishment. We've been doing this podcast for a long time.
Yeah, but never under quarantine.
It's true.
Or stay at home. I guess we're not technically quarantined.
Yeah.
I know people call it that, yeah. But
I think people knew what you meant.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
And
but...
yeah, and no live TV events. So plenty of time in the evening to catch up on 100 movies.
Yeah, indeed. And so, let's just go ahead and jump right in then to number 20, It's a Wonderful Life. It's not Christmas time, but we could watch this movie anyway. A point of trivia about it is that in some ways, like many other movies, this movie kind of gained a lot in popularity when it accidentally lost its copyright. And therefore, a whole bunch of TV channels were able to just show it over and over and over again, making it this big holiday tradition to watch It's a Wonderful Life. And then eventually they basically had to use complicated legal theory saying like, well, technically we don't own the copyright to the film, but we own the copyright to the score. So we actually still have it and you can't just use it forever. And so now only NBC can show it. But there was a period there where it, just like any channel who wanted to, could show it at Christmas time. So a lot of people made it like this Christmas viewing tradition. Kind of like how Shawshank Redemption became much more popular when TNT used to just show it, 100 times a year or more.
Yeah. For whatever reason, we don't have to give him Shawshank Redemption, but yeah, it's one of those movies where it's like, once you've seen it, it's watchable from any point and for any amount of time.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating because when you rewatch it just like straight through all in one go, you always have to kind of remember that the part of like the thing that everyone would say, like, what is this movie about? Like, the things that almost everyone would say is actually only like the last half an hour of the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else is really just set up to that.
Well, and okay, so that's actually a great segue because I actually feel the same way about this movie.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was talking about this movie. What did you think I meant?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Shawshank Redemption.
No, this movie. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Oh, I thought. Well,
the thing with Shawshank Redemption is it gained in popularity due to being shown over and over. That was the only comparison there.
Oh, and then I thought you were continuing. And I said like that it's the Shawshank Redemption. The thing about it is it's amazing in that you can start Shawshank Redemption once you've seen it all the way through.
Yeah. You
can start it at any point. So I was talking about that, and then I thought you were referencing like how it really is the last half hour where everything happens, which is sort of true, but definitely more in this movie. Now I understand where you were coming from a lot better.
But yeah, I mean, like you ask anyone to say what happens in A Wonderful Life, what is it about? People always say like, well, there's George Bailey, and this guy lives in a small town, and he's considering committing suicide because he has this, these big problems. And then so the angel shows him what it would have been like if he had been never born. And it's like, yeah, except that's really only the last half hour of the movie.
Right. So the way I kind of felt about that, which was funny watching this, is that is still 100% true. Mm-hmm. And also reflects kind of my feelings about this movie outside of the viewing of it, in that I also think of it. I've seen it all those times, and I don't really remember. All the rest of it. It's kind of one of those ones where it's like, I wondered why it was so high on this list because I'm like, it's okay. Like I get it. Like, it was a nice story. Mm-hmm. learns about what life would be like if he wasn't alive, and then everybody's happy when
Yeah.
it all works out. I couldn't remember that part.
Well, like,
And he crowdsources, the end, and so that's really like nice. And it's like, it's okay. And I sit down and start watching it. And I spend like the first hour, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I mean, this is decent. I know what this is all setting up for. It's good. But then the knockout punch is so good. That last 30 minutes just absolutely is a roundhouse to the emotion.
right. It's kind of fascinating. Like, there's none of the early stuff is bad. It's just designed to be kind of almost subconscious. Like, you're enjoying it, but not necessarily saying, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. But it's all just building to be able to have that amazing catharsis at the end that, it's all needed for, because the catharsis is the summary of all of that.
Right.
We had to see him do all of those things in order to really understand why him not being there causes all of these later problems. And for all of those things, like, there's a couple of them where Clarence has to say, well, it's like this because, you weren't there to save your brother, and so he wasn't there to save all of those other soldiers, or, he has to explain. But for a lot of them, even if we get that one sentence of exposition or whatever, we get it, right? We've seen him be this good guy, and so we get it. And it's so powerful watching this guy who has lost faith in himself get it built back up again.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it even has, and there's even some other more subtle designs that I noticed, in this rewatch, because obviously you're trying to pay attention to some of these things. There are some almost false climaxes of, like, even when you've seen it and you remember, like, there's the first time when the depression hits, and he manages to, like, scrape it all together. Like, you forget that he gets out of that one.
Yeah. Well,
and it's part of the story.
The
as
run
opposed
on the
to, like,
bank.
that's what ruins him.
Yeah, the run on the bank where he says, well, your money's not here, it's in Bill's house, and like, that whole bit is not part of the climax. That's earlier on.
Right,
that's
but it
another
feels
one,
like when you're watching it, like, oh, is this what? Like, until you remember, like, that's right, the run on the bank. Of course, they just used that, and then it's like, no, it was actually even sillier. Like, it was the guy just lost the money, and then the other dude was corrupt and, like, screwed him.
Yeah. Well, and like, it is. I felt in some ways the same way. So I actually had rewatched this movie just this last holiday season. So I rewatched it again for our discussion now, but I had seen it more recently, and it is kind of a delight to rediscover some of those scenes that you really don't actually remember, because for the most part what they're intended to be is just set up so you're prepared for the gut punch later, right? And but some of them, like the early scene before we've even got Jimmy Stewart, where the pharmacist is distraught because he's learned his son has died. Just a bit of trivia: died from the Spanish flu in 1918. That's what it was. But that whole bit where poor George, like, he's trying to tell him, but he can't hear it right now, and he doesn't know what to do. He knows, like, he can't just stay there because the guy's mad at him, but, like, he tries to go and talk to his dad, and that's where he sees that his dad is having a hard time too, and he just doesn't know what to do. But you see the good heart in this little kid, George Bailey, and just that scene is really powerful. Like, where he goes back and he's like, this, sobbing, drunken adult man is literally beating on this kid who's also crying, but trying to say, I know you didn't mean it. I know you're sad because your son died. It's not your fault, but we can't give them these pills. And that moment is really powerful. I also, actually, that just makes me think of another line that I really like from that, where setting up Violet's character, just with them as little girls at the soda shop, and Violet's like, I like him. It's like, you like every boy. What's wrong with that? And then it's just like, okay, now we know who Violet is.
Yo.
But yeah, so all of these little scenes early on that are certainly fun enough to watch, but you're absolutely right that like you feel like you know them already, or at least anyone who's seen it off and on dozens of times kind of get it, or like maybe you don't even remember those bits, but they all work together to support, like they build this really solid foundation for the powerful finish. On that note, this is a tangent to another movie, but just there's the most recent Pixar movie, Onward. You can watch on Disney Plus now, because that was the one where like its theatrical run was kind of interrupted by all of this, and so you can watch it now. But the reason I bring it up specifically is because that's a movie where I watched through most of it feeling like, yeah, I like this. This is fine. It's clever. It's fun. Sure, I like this. But then, boy, the climax hits, and I was completely unprepared for the depth of the feeling that it would bring out in me. Like, it just felt like the feels level was at a 4 for most of it, and then all of a sudden the last 20 minutes gets a 9. And I was really surprised. You can see why I think of it in this context. But I think that movie, despite having an incredible ending, doesn't support it as well as this one does. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, like, once you see the amazing ending, you sort of look back to try to say, did all of the things that happened before that actually support this? They don't so much. That one feels a little bit like they had a great ending, but weren't really kind of sure how to get there. So there's a lot of like fussing around and moving pieces around to no real benefit until you get to the end. Whereas this one, it really feels like, not organic, but important, right? Like the real meaning of it requires us to actually spend time with and get to know who George Bailey is, for better and worse, right?
Right.
So, sorry to tangent us to another movie. I recommend...
No, it's actually on our list for this weekend, so
yeah.
I have not watched it yet, but I've consistently heard good things.
Well, one of my favorite film writers who writes under Film Crit Hulk had an essay that he put out about Onward recently, talking about some of what I'm talking about. He was kind of agreed with me that like it has a very powerful ending, but like, does it really do everything it could have, to be better up until that point to support that? Whereas this one, he doesn't mention this movie, but I think this movie does do all of that. We have all of these ups and downs and, happy times and sad times for George Bailey throughout. And Jimmy Stewart is so good in this movie, right?
I mean, when he gets the right character, like, I mean, not that he wasn't good all the time, but like he just absolutely delivers. I mean, it's the same as like he was Mr. Smith, right? And Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Smith, yeah. And then of course he's in Rear Window. And then he was also, which one was that? Philadelphia Story? Where it was him and Cary Grant as the...
Yep.
And so, I'm trying to think if there were any others on the list. But yeah, I mean, obviously Jimmy Stewart's, like classic American treasure, I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there who says, oh, can't stand Jimmy Stewart.
No, like, I mean, because he's so good in that, like he's obviously like, I mean, he sort of is idyllic in a lot of ways, like for people to watch, because he's tall and handsome, but he is also very, like, he doesn't come across as like he's not super overconfident. He doesn't have this like cockiness or this air about like, so he's almost like what everybody wants to either be or be with, which is, an attractive, tall person who is also humble. You know, like he just delivers that. Like, and he may not be like that in real life. I mean, obviously, don't know him, but his characters that are like that, he does so well, and that's why they're so relatable because everyone sees themselves in him. You know.
I knew there was one more movie on the list, at least from him, that I couldn't remember, but the reason is because we haven't done it yet, which is Vertigo. Which is interesting because, of course, that's not really the same type of character at all. You know, he is not the relatable everyman in Vertigo.
No, but it doesn't make him not good at those characters. It's just
I agree,
he over the top, I feel like, delivers to that type of character. Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think I only really mentioned that in the context of when, I mean, he was clearly a movie star because people liked seeing him do that. But we also saw when he reached out to do other types of roles, he was also amazing at that.
Well, and maybe that's something to pay attention to when we watch Vertigo. Is part of the reason his performance is so good in Vertigo is because it's against type, you know, a little bit.
Yeah, we kind of want to like him because we like Jimmy Stewart, which I think carries us a little deeper into who he is, because otherwise, like an actor that we had no knowledge of, we might have bounced off sooner from the way he acts. But Jimmy Stewart, because we like him, we're willing to be a little bit more open to him, and that's where we can get into, you know, being willing to sympathize with the mental place that he's in, even as he is, you know, got some behavior that we probably disapprove of. And in fact, it makes it that much more unsettling when we see him acting so, you know, controlling and intense, right?
Right. Well, that's what I was hinting at without diving into the entire thing.
Sure.
Right.
Well, we'll certainly be talking more about Vertigo when we get up to number 9 on the list.
Yes.
But yeah, Jimmy Stewart is just like he's this treasure. But this is one of those movies, you know, like when people do the Jimmy Stewart impressions, lots of times it's lines from this movie. This is the one that people know. Obviously, he's been in lots of things, but this is probably like just from the, you know, American pop culture subconscious. This is probably the Jimmy Stewart movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's great. I find it interesting watching him play opposite Donna Reed, just because before I ever saw this movie, in terms of understanding like who actors and actresses were, I used to watch a lot of Nick at Night, and there was the Donna Reed show, where she's the mom in this pretty standard, typical 50s black and white family sitcom. And that's who Donna Reed was to me for the longest time. And so seeing her play a different character, like once I realized it was her, because she's younger in this than she was in that show. But, you know, there's a little bit of a, oh, yeah, different character. Which actually just makes me think about how differently she plays herself as the old maid spinster librarian version of herself in Pottersville at the end, which I think honestly is probably the only part of the movie that I really sort of rolled my eyes at.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty weak because it's almost, you know, it's like the modern joke of like, God, what was the one where the 90s teen comedy where Freddie Prinze Jr. and Rachel Lee Cook, and she's, you know, she wears in a ponytail and glasses, and then
she's all that. Is that the one?
Yeah, she's all that. Yeah, and then, you know, she takes her ponytail out and takes the glasses off and puts on some makeup and all this. But like, she was always hot when she looked the other way.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, it's also kind of like the whole trope of like, you know, Hollywood ugly is a movie star who is just wearing unflattering clothes. You know, it's like
exactly. I mean, that's why that one's become kind of the trope of like the joke, is because it was so, she is so pretty even in the like bad version of her.
Well, and the thing is,
the reveal of her becoming hot, and you're like, yeah, she's just dressed up.
And she's only 36. So it's not like the old maid, poor Mary,
Right.
unmarried at 36. Oh, God forbid. Now, I mean, that said, I mean, the original kind of point of bringing that up is just, you see Donna Reed play that character sort of very differently in a way that's meant to sort of say the Mary that we have come to know and like from those other scenes, we don't like seeing her act, timid and afraid and all that. Although, I mean, they make being a librarian seem like somehow that's a horrible fate. But, again, that's part of that whole same thing. Because it just makes me think of Marion the librarian in Music Man. That's not as sad. Well, I guess it is kind of played as sad until he shows up, isn't it? Anyway, where was I? That's kind of a whole tangent there. But yeah, I mean, obviously she's really good in this, even though, like, a lot of what she has to do is just be, first the sort of, the girl playing hard to get a little bit, and then becomes, supportive wife. But like, there's a steal in her, like, in the sequence where he's at his rock bottom and he comes home and he's like yelling at the kids and stuff like that. I think it's important that the movie show him get that low, right? Because we've seen him be such a good guy throughout that we have to really believe how, that he is not just in a bad situation, but it feels like a bad situation. He feels like Job in that moment, where it's not even just this. It's his whole life that he has had to just, like, nothing goes his way. It's everything, crashing down on him. And, so he is not just distraught, but he's angry, right? And it's not his kid's fault. We know that. It's not his wife's fault. We know that. Ultimately, those are the things that, like, are really what he treasures at the end. But he has that moment where he loses sight of that. But there's the moment where we see her, on one hand, be really worried about him. But on the other hand, when he starts, like, yelling at the kids and making them cry, there's a moment there where we see her kind of getting a little mad back at him, right? Like, she doesn't yell back, but there's a moment where she's just like, we see in her face, she's saying, like, what is wrong with you? I think it's a good performance.
So. No, I agree. I mean,
so, anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I have more, but I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking.
I mean, I actually had to go and look up when I was watching this if the villain was actually who Mr. Burns was based off of.
Oh, yeah.
It turns out he's not. Mr. Burns was based off of John Rockefeller, the oil tycoon or railroad or whatever, but it did. This villain was so. I mean, that villain tropes like still exist. Like that obviously is like this thing, like the old, crotchety, bald white dude.
Well, and played by Lionel Barrymore, which is I think that's a good example of an actor's name where I think a lot of people sort of know the name as being a famous classic actor, but may not actually be able to name anything he's done. You know what I mean? Like, he's sort of just, like, it's one of those names. But I wouldn't have, honestly, I think if I wasn't looking at the cast list right now, I wouldn't have been able to say, oh, yeah, he played Mr. Potter. But I think Mr. Potter is such an important reason that this movie is as enduring as it is. Not necessarily because of his performance, which is good in the sense of being this credible villain, this threat, like this archetype of the opposite, this foil for George Bailey, right? he represents the opposite, like the dark side of the idealism that George Bailey has. He's the other side of that coin.
Right.
But it's so important, I think, to this movie that he doesn't get his comeuppance. Nobody ever finds out that he stole the money. He just keeps
Right.
it. He never gets punished, except that by implication, he gets punished because he is a lonely old man, lonely, frustrated old man who doesn't have anything except money. And that's why he's bitter, and that's why he's so mean-spirited. And so, by implication, his punishment is that that's all he's ever going to have, because he can't be open to anything else. But I feel like if this movie had in its conclusion some big moment where, like, someone catches him or his driver turns him in or something like that, and just, oh, the money's not lost after all, hooray, the bad guy goes down, like, that would have made it all feel much cheaper and more conventional, I think.
Oh, 100%. Like, and that's why I segued us into like talking about him, because that I 100% agree with. I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because his comeuppance is that his nefarious thing that almost wrecked George Bailey, that he thought would actually put him out, didn't work because of how good George is.
Mm-hmm.
That's his punishment. And like you said, it wouldn't have felt right if someone then said, oh, well, because the point the movie's trying to make is it doesn't matter. Like, if you do the right things, you're going to be okay, even if what we would see as the right outcome doesn't come to pass, which would be that he gets caught and he has to give the money back.
Right. Well,
George found another way to do it because he had built a sense of community, and like that's a more powerful message. Like, that's the emotional knockout punch.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it introduces this little bit of a layer of bittersweet in there when you think on it later, because another aspect of him just getting away with it is the fact that Uncle Billy never gets vindicated. Right? Like, he just, like everyone knows, he lost the money somehow. Never found again. That's kind of hard to think about. Now, like, the happy ending after all, but that it being this, I think Uncle Billy is this interesting character to include, because he's a character who really, I mean, he's clearly good-hearted. Everyone kind of loves him. He's charming, but he does cause problems. Like even though were Mr. Potter not a monster, he a normal person would have said, "Oh, this is that money. I better give it back." But he did misplace it because he got distracted.
Right.
And in fairness, I think lots of people could get distracted for a few seconds, right? It didn't take him long. I think we've all, left our keys on the kitchen counter or something and gone down to the car, right? Like, I mean, it's not this huge glaring mix-up. He was reading, Mr. Potter had the paper. He got distracted by the conversation. He's kind of mad and flustered, and just the envelope got folded up with the newspaper, right? And so it's a relatively easy mistake to make, but it was set up by us realizing, oh, he is kind of a eccentric character. He has the Raven there in the building and loan, and he's just always kind of this little bit of a screw up, but we love him anyway character.
Yeah, and so, well, kind of how I feel about that is that the point I took from it is that George relies on other people and the goodness of other people, even though he probably shouldn't have trusted Uncle Billy with the money, because he had shown us that he is a little, he's not. Mm-hmm. He didn't show us he was going to lose money, but he was a little more untrustworthy from his competency that it wasn't like a surprise when he showed back up and he didn't have the money.
Right.
But the point is that the greater good that was generated by trusting and being and leaning on other people outweighed the one time, even as catastrophic as the mistake was, the community fill-in was better because he had that attitude, you know?
Well, right. And even as far as like, should George have trusted him with it? Well, I mean, the implication is that he has done this exact same transaction every week for 30 years.
Right.
He does it all the time. So, like, it's, you know, he made the mistake this time, but it was actually almost not his absent-mindedness that caused the mistake there, because it was the sort of mistake almost anyone could make in the moment. But it's just the fact that he's absent-minded generally that made it so easy to believe that the money could be anywhere now. Right? Because if it were just a momentary lapse for someone who's otherwise been completely dependable all their lives, it would be much more like, no, I'm sure I had it right here. Where is it now? Did somebody take it? As opposed to, uh-oh, we don't know where it is. It could be anywhere. Is it in his office? Did he lose it somewhere on the way? Now it's gone. Instead of being able to actually say, retrace your steps. Where was it? Where were you? And, you know, that sort of thing, right? So, but, and then of course, you know, what we learn is that in the, you know, the dark timeline without George Bailey, he's in an institution. And, you know, he is one of the characters that we really just don't see at all in that timeline, right? Like, it makes sense that we wouldn't see George's brother because he would have died as a kid. But, like, we see Mr. Gowers, the pharmacist, now as a, you know, a homeless drunk. We see, you know, we don't see the Martini family, but we see Nick, the bartender, there when we learn, you know, that the restaurant is different. You know, we see Mary, we see George's mom, and, you know, but we don't see Billy because, you know, he is in an institution. And that's, you know, the idea that is that this lovable guy who's sometimes a little forgetful and sometimes a little nutty, but we love him and we like his presence in our lives. But that requires some charity of the spirit, you know, to be able to overlook the occasional time that he messes something up.
Right. And you know, to your point about him not being shown in the institution, I mean, I think that's almost like like getting too complex about why it got this way. It's like the Jaws theory, though, of like the less you show the shark, sometimes the scarier it is. Like, because what you see, you know, and it just doesn't work. And like, I feel like that would have been the same thing. Like, tried to have him show what he looks like in a mental institution, also, it would have been a weird. It wouldn't have felt right. Like, it just wouldn't have. Just knowing that he's there, like, your brain can go the right way without it.
I think just logistically also, it just, like, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, how would they get there? It would sort of break the logic that they'd been following of, we're not seeing things that George doesn't see as he's running around this altered version of the town.
Oh, yeah, true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. I was thinking of it more of like the logistics of actually like displaying it, but you're right. Like, he physically needs to go to these places like he still exists, but hadn't existed.
Now, they could have done something with that. Like, for example, the way they showed that the place where you know, the lots where he had built all those houses is now a graveyard instead. You know, Potter's Field is a little on the nose, but, you know. But I mean, you know, not in a bad way, but like, there's so many just like these powerful moments, because the thing is that, like, Uncle Billy, we can totally see how he is a character that would occasionally cause problems because he's a little absent-minded and he's a little bit eccentric. But at the same time, I don't think that there's ever a point in any of those scenes where we we think, like, no, he's a bad guy and should not be trusted. He would be better off in an institution. No, he needs a little bit of help. He needs a little bit of support. He could not be trusted to run the savings in the building and loan by himself. But usually, can he take phone calls? Yeah, he can. Can he go down to the bank and make a deposit, the same one he makes every week? Well, sure, most of the time.
Yeah, but then you have to, like, I mean, again, we're not going to nitpick the logic of the thing, but would you really trust something that could financially break you?
Well, okay, yes and no, but I mean, the thing is, can we trust? But the thing is, we also have to remember, he has done this every week for 30 years. So I would say they can trust.
You shouldn't have had the guy who, you know.
Well, but what I'm
saying,
saying,
I'm not trying to nitpick the logic. You're arguing the lot, like, again, but in reality, like, you would never.
No, what I'm saying is that the mistake he makes that loses the money is actually something that honestly could have happened to anybody.
Right. And where I'm saying about not nitpicking the logic is that probably shouldn't have been their process. Not even just Uncle Billy himself, but like if the $8,000 that you have to get every week could ruin you and cause you to kill yourself, maybe you need a little more secure of a method than just a guy walking down the streets with it.
If we want to get into nitpicking the logic, I honestly think that that's not the problem. The problem is that the bank examiner thing doesn't make sense, where the idea that, oh, well, he's there and he's looking at the books and George is going to go to jail because there will be, like, the won't line up. So the implication would be that the money was stolen or embezzled, right? Like, but that doesn't really hold water, that, like, oh, the money that we lost today is missing, therefore automatically George is going to jail. Like, that doesn't really, that's not how it actually works.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah. Exactly. So to go back, okay, I'll concede your point. So same thing. So 30 years of our books balancing, and just today they don't, and the examiner is going to wreck everything. You know, like, that literally isn't, you're right, that's not how it works. Okay. Yeah. I had pinpointed the wrong.
No, that's all right. It's like, in this house we stand Uncle Billy. But, you know, to some extent, I think it feels so disastrous because not necessarily is that how it would work in real life, but because George has felt Mr. Potter breathing down his neck this whole time, right? Like, that's the problem, is that even if there's any tiny implication that something's wrong, Potter's going to swoop in and make the most of that, right? But then again, like, just because... And that's what makes it
so powerful, is that that's the first person he goes to, as opposed to, like, the crowdsourcing. He goes to him to ask for the loan first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's so, like...
heartbreaking.
Yeah. We know how low he would have to be to get to that. But, like, again, just the logic of it, you know, I'm not concerned about the logic of it. But if we talk through it, the thing is, like, if the concern is that people believe that he has embezzled the money, like, if that's the worry, is that the examiner will say, the books say there should be $8,000 more here than there is, you must have stolen it, therefore you go to jail. Or, alternately, you are just not actually, your records are bad. You know, like, if that could be it too, right? But the thing is, it becomes so public that they get the money back by everybody in town bringing in cash. Like, how does that remedy the missing $8,000 in the books? Like, they can make up the difference in terms of cash flow, but it's obvious where that money came from. You know, the other $8,000 is still missing. So, I mean, I'm not worried about this. The movie doesn't want us to be worried about this. It tells us, so this just makes me think of one of my biggest pet peeves about the way people talk about Titanic, which is the whole thing with, like, oh, could that piece of wood actually have supported Jack and Rose at the end? And my answer is no. The movie shows us that it won't. It doesn't matter if you measure the physical dimensions of it and calculate the buoyancy of the wood, and that in theory, by science, they could have both been saved on it. The movie shows us her on it, him trying to climb on it, and it tips over. That is the movie telling us that it's not big enough for both of them. Why can't we have to let the movie tell us what's true and not try to build, outside world science onto it?
Correct. So
All right. All right. I've ranted enough about that now.
yes. So I am at the conclusion of my thoughts of It's a Wonderful Life. So can we go into our wrap up?
Okay. All
You
right.
have more? You have way more?
No, I'm just saying that I feel like I feel like it's an impatient tone is all. That's fine. Um,
Oh, I was trying to transition just with an awkward segue.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, the
no, I'm
last
not
thing I was going
impatient.
to say is just in terms of like what awards it won and everything. So it was nominated for and then won Best Picture, Best Actor for Jimmy Stewart, Best Director for Frank Capra, Best Sound Recording, and Best Film Editing. And so those are a lot of the big ones, and but it becomes this classic. And I think the last thing I wanted to say about it is just that the term Capra-esque. We talked about this a little bit when we talked about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but the term Capra-esque seems to talk about like schmaltzy and everything. And it's one thing to say, oh, like the angels, and every time a bell rings, and that, yeah, there's some schmaltz in this movie. But the thing is, so much of the movie is not like that frankly, when the schmaltz comes, we're ready for it. We want it. That's how I feel anyway.
I, I'm trying to think if I agree. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay. So I guess with that said, you want to move on to On the Waterfront?
yes.
All right. So let's move on to number 19, On the Waterfront. Let me get my other poster up on here. This is the 1954 drama from director Elia Kazan, generally considered to be most famous for Marlon Brando's performance as a young man in one of the all-time classic movie lines. And I got distracted trying to load this other movie poster. No, I can't find where I downloaded the movie poster for On the Waterfront. So I'll take a moment doing that. How about you tell people about On the Waterfront?
On the Waterfront is. Do you call it a crime drama? I mean, there is crime, political drama. It's complicated. It talks about a very unique time in the 50s and tells it via the dock workers that are affected by a lot of what's going on with the politics in the 50s and some of the that's why I say is it crime, because there's like some of the union pieces to it. I wasn't prepared to give the summary, so now I'm kind of I'm just kind of waffling on this. There is and which is why I sometimes call it a crime drama, because he exposes the corruption of.
Yeah, sorry, you broke up a little bit in the middle of that sentence is all. No, I will. But
it wasn't the most coherent sentence. It was
okay.
I was trying to. I was opining on whether I want to call this a crime drama or a political drama.
Yeah, I could see either way. I would probably I feel like it's almost more of a morality play than really either of those, because I think that on the one hand it is kind of about a real thing, but on the other hand I think it's also more about that concept in the abstract of like standing up against injustice when it's the harder road. I feel like it's almost more about that as a concept than it is about this specific situation.
Uses
this as a backdrop for that larger conversation.
Right. The fact that there was a lot of political unrest and corruption in the 50s in general, and telling it through the lens of the longshoremen and how they were treated, and the racketeering and all that came on their side. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there are people that might consider this an anti-union movie, although I think it's really more complicated than that, because honestly, I think it also really solidly makes the case for what a union should be and should do, and is really just pointing out that the problem with this one is that the mafia infiltrated it and control everything.
Right, and that's why I started to sort of waffle, like when I was trying to describe it, I was like, well, there was corruption in the union, but I didn't really, like, you articulated it a lot better. Like, there is corruption in the union, but it's not saying that unions are corrupt. It's saying that if unions are corrupt, that's a huge problem, and why we should try to protect unions from corruption.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the problems being caused by this corrupt union are exactly the sorts of problems that happen when there are no unions at all. Right? I mean, it's essentially
you've got the exploitation. It's
it is the, playing favorites of, you play ball and you do what I tell you, and you get to work, whereas the person who speaks up and complains doesn't get to work. That sort of thing. But yeah, so basic synopsis. Marlon Brando plays Terry Malloy, who is the brother of the lieutenant of the local mob boss. Right? So Johnny Friendly is the guy who is in charge of this union, among other sorts of criminal enterprises. And then Eddie... No, what was Charlie Malloy had a nickname, I can't remember now. Charlie is like one of his right-hand guys, amongst lots of other guys that had various nicknames too. And then Marlon Brando plays Terry Malloy, who's the brother of that guy, who is...
Jen.
Oh, Charlie the Gin. Yeah. So, Terry is not the sort of guy that gets brought in on like the real big deals, because he's a little it's not fair to call him dumb, maybe, but he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, so to speak, right? Like, but he is
uneducated, maybe.
Well, but also he's just kind of seemed like uninterested in intellectual pursuits generally. But he used to be a prize fighter, and it comes up a couple of times early on that the end of his prize fighting career, it was a little suspect. And then eventually later in, one of those big scenes, we have him essentially confront his brother with, you're trying to erase and gaslight me that it was my fault that my prize fighting career ended, when what really happened is that you made me take a dive so that you could win a bet. And I never got another chance. And so he has always had kind of this lingering resentment about that, but then again, it's his brother, and it's, he kind of more or less gets taken care of while he plays ball, and he doesn't not benefit from being the brother of this connected guy, right? But then again, what we see at the very beginning of the movie is that they kind of take advantage of him and use the fact that he's not seen as being as connected to kill a guy, right? Like, they say, hey, we just want to talk to this guy. We just want to talk to him and convince him to play ball with us. So what we need you to do is go tell him to meet us on the roof. And then, of course, what they actually do is throw the guy off the roof. And so it becomes a question for Terry of, like, he insists he didn't know. And he's actually kind of upset that that it seems like that is what you were actually planning to do. I don't know if I would have felt okay doing it, but he can't quite say that, right? but he feels abused for been tricked into something he wouldn't have felt comfortable with.
Right.
But it's also a case of like, but you were okay doing it when you thought they might just scare him. It's not like you don't know what goes on. It's not like you don't know that Johnny Friendly does do this bad stuff sometimes. But like this one hurts because you knew him, because he also raised pigeons like you do, right? And, you know, I don't know why I'm suddenly talking to Terry as though he's here. You know, like, so that spawns this little bit of a crisis of conscience for him, along with the fact that Joey, this guy who gets killed at the beginning, his sister shows up. And she's working with this, sister played by Eva Marie Saint. Right?
Sounds right.
No, that's definitely right. I just was looking at the cast list on IMDb and realizing like she is way, way, way down the list, which makes no sense. Yeah, I don't. That's weird. I don't know why she would be so far down the list there. Yeah, it's definitely her, Edie Doyle, Eva Marie Saint. But yeah, so she shows up, and then she's working with this priest played by Carl Malden, and essentially the two of them know that Joey Doyle was killed because he was planning to talk to the authorities about the corruption in the union. And so now he's been murdered for it, and so they're trying to, Edie wants to know who killed her brother. The priest wants to, Father Barry wants to try to convince more people to stand up against the corruption in the union. But so the two of them kind of start insinuating themselves in the local scene at risk to themselves. And through his crisis of conscience, Terry finds himself like he can't dismiss them. And he, one of my favorite early on scenes is the scene where it feels like, so he's definitely sort of flirting with her as they walk through the park and have this conversation. And it seems like he's being awfully familiar in a way that makes us maybe a little bit uncomfortable. But then it's revealed at the end of that conversation that they actually both know each other. They've known each other for years. They were kids together.
Right.
And I think that's such an interesting reveal that they don't sort of reveal that till the end of that scene. Because it takes the scene that feels one way before that and a little different after. Understanding a little more why she might feel like she can be comfortable with him, even though he's doing weird things like she drops her glove and he takes it and won't give it back and he puts it on his own hand and stuff like that. Like, that could start to feel a little like weird and creepy. Like, what are you doing, man?
Right.
But then the reveal that, oh no, this is not just the strange girl who is the sister of the man that you indirectly helped get murdered. It's this girl that you've known your whole life and haven't seen in a while, but also now have this other deeper connection to. And it's different. I thought that's really, that was the scene that when I was watching this time, I was thinking to myself, this movie's really good.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I think not just that scene, but the idea of what the movie does of weaving this really interconnected web of how everybody's related, and how everybody, it's funny, it's almost like even though it's not doing what happened in It's a Wonderful Life, it's using the same mechanic of every human being has all these relationships that have other relationships, and they're all interconnected, and how you treat one person or what you do here affects all these other people. And it's just doing it in a little bit of a different way. And so, but still showing that interconnectedness of us. And I think that's part of what makes this movie so powerful, is that it, you know, him feeling that and then how he responds to that is really, really like what kind of like invigorates the engine of the rest of the movie, you know.
Right.
So
Well, just the fact that the reason the bad guys stayed in power was because everyone thought it was hopeless, right? Everyone felt like there is nothing I can do. I would like to stop this situation, but how can I? If I speak up, I'm just going to get murdered for it, and then nothing will change anyway, so why bother? And so that's where you get these crowd scenes where, like, someone wants to say something and everyone else shuts them up because they're trying to look out for them, like, don't get yourself killed. But then it becomes this thing where at the act of trying to help watch out for someone becomes the same thing as what the bad guys are doing, which is this really, like, it's this really icky sort of corruption, is like just the insidious nature of what that corruption does, is that it turns people's own best instincts into tools of the bad guy. And, you know, even Terry, who is much more connected and protected than most of those, the workers, even he feels like, as he's starting to become more sympathetic of this whole thing, he feels like, what can I do? I can't do anything. You know, but the thing is like, what they're trying to say is, you could testify, and he's kind of thinking, well, I could get myself killed, sure. But yeah, it's
well, and that's part of a good narrative structure to the movie. Obviously, is that, you know, what the opening, not the opening, but like the beginning climactic scene is him being a part of killing somebody who is turning on them. So that when he gets into his decision making as to whether or not he should testify against them, he has that, like, that's been established as like, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know. So it's a really good narrative story.
Yeah, and like, for example, when they hear about, like, oh, there's going to be this meeting in Father Barry's church, they tell him again, it's like, well, because you're not seen as being as connected to us, we want you to go. And he's kind of feeling like, what, really? Like, okay, I mean, I guess I will. And it's mixed result anyway, because as soon as he shows up, everyone's like, oh God, why is he here? But, you know, he's sitting in there and he's listening to Father Barry get no traction at all, and nobody's even saying anything, only to realize that his brother and Johnny Friendly sent a bunch of goons to beat everybody up anyway. Like, they made him go and sit there to listen to them, but also didn't even care. Like, they didn't even care if anything was actually happening. They didn't care what he might have to say or do about it. They just were already planning to have everyone get beaten up. So we have that that as being like another straw, so to speak, on this situation where he is underestimated by them, like used by them, but at the same time also not being treated with like respect and understanding. Were you able to follow that? I mean, I know you were kind of.
I was, yeah.
Okay.
You saw that I had to mute myself and talk to another person.
And that's fine. I'm just I'm just trying to make sure we're still having a conversation.
Yes, I was doing both.
Yeah. Okay. So.
But not as engaged in either as I should have been. But that's how it works.
Okay. So I guess my point is that he has, you know, they keep telling him to do stuff, and he's realizing how hypocritical they are about it, in the sense, or rather, not hypocritical, but how thoughtless and inconsiderate they are. Like, in theory, he's supposed to be like one of their guys that they like and take care of, but they just use him and abuse him without a thought. They tell him, oh, go spy on these people, but also we're going to send a bunch of guys to beat them up no matter what, regardless of the fact that you're there. So he's got to be thinking like, well, if you're going to do that anyway, first of all, it's not merited based on the fact that they weren't actually making any progress in terms of organizing. But also, like, why did I even need to be there if that's what you're doing anyway? And so any idea that he owes any loyalty to them is just completely eroded as he increasingly sees, you know what? These people have a friggin' point. They're being abused and they're not even doing anything. You know, they are right to complain about this sort of treatment. The narrative of Terry gradually realizing that his heart is on the side of the people who oppose where his meal ticket comes from, essentially.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's again one of the other powerful parts of this movie is, you know, and I think it plays off of the same thing. Like, there's this interconnectedness of like everything we do affects other people,
Mm-hmm.
and he's trying to like sit in the background of that, like at the beginning. And there's a nice gradual realization that like brings him like up to the foreground that I thought was, you know, the movie does really well. Like it really, like I think what you were talking about when I was sort of paying attention was the, you know, how the movie like walks us through like how he moves from like just complacent, letting things happen to him, to taking an active role, mm-hmm. and actually being an agent for change, as opposed to just sitting there and just letting his life happen to him and mm-hmm. changing what his life could be, which then, because we've built this like how all these people are related, has a waterfall effect on like everybody else. So, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the movie does not soft pedal what he is giving up. Like, it's one thing, it's not even just the matter of feeling like he is putting his life in danger by cooperating, but it's also literally like the little kids, the kids, right. They were members of like the gang that he started when he was a kid that help him take care of the pigeons, are suddenly furious and devastated at what they see as a betrayal. They kill all his pigeons, the pigeons that they had helped care for, because they think he is now like, you know, betraying the neighborhood. You know, he is basically giving up everything. Like, it's not even just a matter of someone might try to have him killed. It is people that he loves and cares about are going to turn their backs on him.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry, there was like a bug in here.
Okay.
This has been more challenging than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, no, you're right. Like but again, that's the whole point, is that like, because he's connected to all these people, it makes it that much more difficult to make the decision to rise above this and try to like be, again, that person who tries to make that change, because everybody else is almost subtly reliant on this mob rule that you just keep your mouth shut, you do this, you do that, like, and even directly tied to the mob, like they are still impacted by if you upset the boat, you know, and that's where like all the waterfall effects come, you know.
Right. Yeah. This culture that gets built up of like, you don't talk to the cops, you know, you stay there for the neighborhood, and like, and that's something where like you can see how that develops, but then you can also see how people like Johnny Friendly take advantage of that, right? You know, it's one thing to say, you know, maybe sometimes the cops are not on your side, but that also can be taken advantage of by people who are definitely also not on your side, and make it, you know, it's in their best interests to keep you from, like, make it seem like a moral failing to stand up and say that, do the right thing. Yeah. So uh, we had that whole thing develop, and just you want to talk a little bit about Carl Malden as Father Barry?
I mean, you obviously have. Go ahead and start. You
Okay.
tell you. you
I feel a little bit like I'm having a one-sided conversation here.
oh, I don't mean that. I mean, I just
Okay.
I keep feeling like every time, like like I don't know. This movie for me though is just like it like I guess that's what I like about it, and maybe why maybe my notes aren't as like detailed or complete, and I'm like having to like think back. It's because this movie for me is much more like conceptual of like, and that's why I had trouble at the beginning of like, is it a political or a crime, or it? But it's more just this feeling you get when you watch it of like watching this guy go through just taking the lumps that are given to him, realizing that, you know, he's been kind of screwed, and then realizing that, okay, well, I'm okay with me being screwed, but now other people are getting screwed. I mean, killed. I mean, but in the concept of lifting it other ways, you know. So now I'm not necessarily okay anymore. But how do I deal with that when this is a societal problem? And you know what? I'm kind of feeling like I want to get out of that. I kind of feel like I want to be better than this. And I start to take steps, and there's drawbacks. And I take more steps, and there's still more drawbacks. But I'm feeling like I'm starting to gain some momentum, though, because this is what feels right to me. And that's kind of what I left the movie feeling. And so, yeah, some of the specifics, like, I don't know, I'm just like less, I don't know, I didn't take as many notes on that, and I didn't leave with as many feelings on that, because like this, I think that's part of, again, what I think it's good about the movie is that I didn't leave with, obviously some of, like, there's famous scenes, but like didn't leave with any like, oh, this scene, this scene, this scene I want to remember or talk about. It was more of like the journey that happens during it.
I was
Does that
really
make
just
sense?
talking about like performances, because I mean the acting in this movie is like one of the big reasons like it's considered such a high place on the list. So like I felt like Carl Malden is just a really compelling, charismatic dude
Oh,
in that
okay.
role.
Yeah. So I thought you were specifically talking about like how, like, that character, like, yeah, no, I mean, they're all, he in particular is very good, because again, if you're thinking about like from the theme that I'm talking about, like the idea that you know, he's sort of like the guiding person, but without it feeling lectury, you know, he does a phenomenal job of that.
Yeah.
You know,
I thought what's one of the things that's fascinating with that character is it would be easy for him to just be like a trope, like no actual character to him, but to just sort of be the voice of doing the right thing. But there are moments in the movie where we see essentially him making the decision to encourage Edie to continue seeing him, probably not because it's best for her, but because he's hoping it will help to persuade Terry to testify. Like, he's having to sort of weigh the relative moral consequences of a big good versus a potential risk to someone. Yeah. So
yeah, I hadn't actually even thought of that. I mean, obviously it's there. You're right, but
I mean, it's subtle. Like they don't have dialogue with him sort of having that conversation, but I feel like there's a scene where, like, you know, he's I feel like you can see there's moments of conflict when he's doing a little bit of like, oh yeah, I called you here and just so happens that they're on their way. Maybe you should say hi when they get here. You know what? You two go talk. That sort of thing. But then you can kind of see on his face that he's a little bit like, is that the right thing? I mean, I'm hoping that it will help persuade Terry, but she is certainly sticking her neck out, potentially at risk, getting in this whole circuit. Although it's certainly also true that, when it seems like Terry is too close with them, they talk about killing Terry, not about killing the priest or Edie.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, yeah, I guess I never even like thought of it from that angle. I mean, I guess it's sort of what I was talking about again, like the subtlety of his character and like how he's guiding it along the lines that he wants with a subtlety. But I never really thought about those like individual scenes of what he was doing with Evie that were actually like a little more layered. That's that's actually really interesting.
Well, because he's in that position knowing that every time he tries to persuade someone to testify, they are risking their lives. And he's trying to counsel them to do the right thing to help everybody, but he knows he puts them in danger when he convinces them to testify. Right?
Right.
Like that's what happens with
Dugan,
right? And so that's the struggle that he is facing, is just this feeling of like, it's like that doctor's oath of first do no harm, right? Does as a priest, is he subject to that type of a promise, or is the goal of making the world a better place worth risk? But not just risk like to himself, but like persuading someone else to take a risk.
Yeah, that I'm surprised that like I didn't catch on to that earlier, because obviously it fits with the greater theme of the movie and what I took from the movie, and so obviously I felt that, but I guess I just didn't recognize that from those individual scenes. But that makes a ton of sense now that you say it.
Yeah. I think that the reason that the one conversation scene between like Marlon Brando and Terry and his brother, like I think the reason that scene, in addition to it just being very powerful, like it becomes sort of the thesis statement of so much of the movie and for Terry's journey, is because the whole time up to that point, it's a question for Terry of like loyalty, like what are you loyal to, right? And here he is thinking like, well, family, right? Family's what's important, or the union, that like they take care of you, right? Like you're supposed to be loyal to them. That's this highest ideal, is you're loyal, right? You don't betray your family. You don't betray the union that you work for. But over the course of the movie, what we are seeing is him realizing slowly that that's a one-way relationship. They don't actually look out for him the way he is looking out for them. He's being loyal to them, but they're not loyal back. And that's why, like, that conversation with his brother, where his brother's trying to get in and say, oh boy, I tell you, you were such a hot stuff back in the day as a fighter. If only that manager of yours hadn't brought you along too fast. And Terry's having to finally say, that's not what happened. You're trying to make it sound like you were trying to take care of me and nothing's your fault. But what really happened is my dream ended because I did you a favor, and now not only are you not grateful for it, but you try to pretend like it didn't even happen. And that's where he's saying is like, you're my brother and I love you, but you didn't take care of me. why am I, you're asking me to do all of this out of love and loyalty, but it's not coming back to me. And it's not like it should just be transactional, but, but you are serving yourself, not me. And then saying that I should serve you because of loyalty.
Right.
And, I think that's, like that's that moment, like I could have been somebody. I could have been a contender. That is like I gave up what I cared about for you. And there's nothing coming back my way. Just this expectation that I'm not even supposed to talk to a girl because it's inconvenient for you. Because that makes me unloyal, and we get to that moment where, like, he persuades his brother that, and his brother is, not strong enough to stand up in turn, but recognizes the truth of that enough to let Terry go, and then gets murdered for it. And that's where Terry sees even more. It's not even just about him and how the world has hurt and betrayed Terry Malloy. There is no loyalty at any point in this pyramid. It's not just that they take advantage of him. It's like Charlie was the one that was in with them. He worked for them. He was one of them. And then the first time he decides to not kill his own brother, they decide to kill him for that, to make a point. And that's where he recognizes, I think, that it's not even just about this idea of, they didn't take care of me, why should I take care of them? It's about just recognizing that there is just this falseness from top to bottom in the whole organization that needs to be fought. In this case, literally, because he literally just like goes down and beats the crap out of him until the guy says, "Oh shit, I'm losing. Here, come on, all my henchmen. Let's go 5-on-1."
Yes. So, so since you went, you don't want to feel like you're the only one like talking about it. I think what's interesting to me is like let me approach this a different way also. Like
sure.
I think I marked on the sheet that I hadn't seen this movie. And I actually had seen this movie. So I was always kind of in this like weird fog of like, I thought I hadn't seen this, but I'm kind of remembering these things. And so I left with like just a little more vagueness of like what the movie made me feel when I watched it.
Yeah.
And all of these things, like as you're saying them, like I'm agreeing with you and I'm nodding with you, like so I'm not trying to be like non-participative, but it just is. It was a weird watching experience.
I think that's fair, and I'm sorry if I kind of was overly critical about that because I get that.
I did distract it by trying to order dinner in the middle of like one of the things you were talking. Like that part's on me. Like that's and it caused you to feel that way. But but it also made me kind of reflect on that. It's like yes, all these things you're talking about. Like yes, I get it. Like, but I guess I didn't connect them in a way that I could articulate like an argument about it, the way that I could something I've seen a bunch of times, or even something I saw for the first time.
Right.
Because this was a weird, like, I think I've probably seen it once. And like, so I was, the whole part of the movie, I'm like, I feel like, have I just seen enough clips?
Yeah, I can understand how like that's a weird headspace to watch a movie in.
Yeah, and especially a movie like this, which is very much like everything is driving driving the train down a very specific theme that it expects you to leave with. And that's part of why the performances are getting this. Part of why those scenes are important. Like the scene where he confronts his brother. If you remove that from context, like, okay, yeah, it's cool. Like, I could have been a contender. Like, I get that he did it with some power. But when you realize it's his like epiphany that he needs to stand up on his own, like, it's so much more powerful. And so I guess, like I said, there's so many powerful scenes like that you're able to describe and how that actually builds together that I kind of wasn't able to do as well on this one, you know.
I mean, that's okay. I think that there are things about this movie that are a little weird, that just play a little weird. For one, it's got an original score by Leonard Bernstein, of all people. But the score is a weird score. I think Leonard Bernstein, of course, was an incredibly talented composer, and I don't think that the music is bad, but there are points in this movie where the music is weird. Like, it has music that feels like some tense action sequence when Charlie the Gent is just walking up the dock and looking pensive. You know, and to be fair, it was the scene right after he had been told, well, figure out whether your brother can be worked with or not, because if not, we might have to take care of that. And so it's certainly tense, but really all that's happening on screen is just him slowly walking up the dock going, and then we're having the music going, bum 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 bum, and it's like, what, really? It's weird. So the score is weird, and then I feel like everything after that big conversation in the car has a little bit of strangeness to it. Because, like, the very last sequence where they're, like, he's had the crap beaten out of him, but they make it sound like everyone will actually only get to work if you can walk on your own power into the factory, and then we'll walk in with you. But, like, somehow we can't help you do it. You have to do it on your own. Like, if you were actually beaten too badly by having 5 guys kick you on the ground, then somehow the bad guys still win. Like, it's this weird sort of contrived moment, I felt like. Like, I don't see why that piece is required to seal the deal. Right? Like...
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some of that is part of, like... movies of that time, though, like, needed that, and that's why we recognize movies that, like, kind of rise above, like, that sort of. It's almost the flip side of the comeuppance that we didn't get in It's a Wonderful Life. It's like you have to have this, like, huge redemption of, like, and it's almost like you said, contrived. Of, well, yeah, he's gonna be able to get up on his own. He's gonna walk in there and he's gonna motivate everybody. And it doesn't matter that, like, they had these weird parameters on it, you know, like.
I don't know. Maybe it was just me, but I just sort of felt like in that whole sequence when we're seeing how hard it is for him to get up and walk, I just kept feeling like he shouldn't have to do that.
No, he shouldn't.
Johnny Friendly also already got knocked in the water. He already made the point by going and fighting him. Everybody knows what's going on at this point. Why does it matter that he walk into the building first?
It doesn't. Like I'm saying, I think it was a movie trope at the time. That, just need the neat bow.
Yeah. No. I don't know. I guess I just didn't like it. It made me mad at the other factory workers for requiring that of him.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that's just my problem. But it just seems like he very nearly just got beaten to death for all those people. But now they're saying, uh-oh, well, you know, if you can't cross the T and dot the I, it's all for nothing. You know, so, you know, sorry, try to hold your broken ribs together.
Yes, it was extreme. I forgive it, though, because of, like, again, the movie dramatic thing it was trying to do and, like, tie this bow on, like, how inspirational he is.
Yeah.
He can, like, walk in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on that. I guess I just sort of felt I felt that at that last sequence. And I think maybe part of that was me feeling a little bit like earlier on in the movie I was thinking like, "Oh my god, I love this movie. It's so good." And then I just feel like some of those later sequences feel a little bit incoherent by comparison. I felt like we had this really solid narrative that just lays out in a way that feels organic, but nonetheless builds to this point where this guy, Terry Malone, realizes that he's been on the wrong side all this time and that he has been sold a bill of goods that's actually nothing, and that everything he thought he stood for is actually wrong, but he's willing to finally make that stand. And then that whole final sequence just feels muddled by comparison. Which, I don't know. Again, that was just my reaction watching it this time. I still think it's an amazing movie. It deserves to be on the list. I just, like, I felt like it goes off the rails a little bit at the end.
Yeah, and that's fair. And like I was just talking about earlier, like for me, it was just the whole thing was always sort of like disconnected. So, and maybe that's part of what made me feel that way, is that like even though I have seen it, it's not grounded in as much like some of the later parts are a little like you said, disconcerting or whatever. So
well, not disconcerting.
Not disconcerting,
so much.
disconnecting. Yeah, disconnected from the rest of the. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was more just like it didn't make sense why things had to happen in a certain way. So it's one thing for him to say, okay, well, I have to go confront Johnny Friendly. And even everything leading up to like, well, okay, like nothing's going to happen until we really draw this guy out and, make an example of him. And then he gets the crap beaten out of him. But again, it just increasingly feels like, what is it exactly that we're trying to accomplish? What is it that he thinks is going to happen? Is he trying to kill Johnny Friendly? Is that what's trying to happen? What is his goal when he goes back there? Like, other than sort of an abstract confrontation in mind, but then also just the logistics of like, okay, well, factory owner's looking at his watch. Hey, Johnny Friendly, why don't you have your workers going in there? And it's because, Terry is causing this confrontation that he needs to deal with, and it's making him like lose. Like, it's a little bit weird that the the ship owner who needs his boxes unloaded is somehow like the one with the actual most power in the scene, and yet is left out of the actual narrative altogether, other than being a time clock for the bad guy. I mean, it's not a big problem. I just sort of felt like everything else up to that last sequence felt like it was just really part of this really solid whole with, coherent themes and everything sort of leading into that thread, and then it just sort of gets a little messy at the end.
Right. And that's where, like, I can't speak to you because I was always kind of in, like, a disconnected space the whole time, so it didn't feel like a certain part of the movie was, like, making a ton of sense, and then, like, part didn't, so...
Yeah.
But,
all right, well, so that's On the Waterfront. So
that's On the Waterfront, yeah.
Let's talk about where these movies belong on the list.
All right. We don't have the list.
Well, I have it up. I mean, I don't have it showing on the screen or anything, but...
Sorry, yeah, I know we stopped doing that. We used to do that.
Yeah.
I can quickly get to it, though.
Right.
Well, I can tell you right now, I'm going to leave It's a Wonderful Life. I think I'm going to leave it where it is.
Yeah? Your next one down is Chinatown.
Yeah, I think this is one of those ones, like, I'm coming to some of these where it's like, you know what, after rewatching them, they are that good, and they belong there. And this is one that I feel that way. So I think this is going to happen for me more as we move, is like, when I watch one that I say, this is where it belongs, I'm just going to leave it there. And so Go ahead. You were
What
about to say something.
well, what I was actually just thinking is this, as I look at the list, like some of the positions that we've got things in, I feel like if I were reordering the list today, I would put them in a different order than I apparently put them in when we placed them at the time, right? So I think it's just a reflection of how our opinions on movies can evolve and everything. But what I was kind of thinking is that maybe at some point we might do an exercise where we kind of go back through the list as we have ordered it and see if we still want to keep things where they are or shift them around a little more, with the
Yeah.
broader context.
Well, yeah, because there's some recency bias in what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
In that, like, we watch a movie and we're we're reflecting on how much we like that. So there are probably some movies that we elevated past where we probably would have,
Mm-hmm.
because in the recency of watching them, they were that good.
Yeah.
Which may be part of why I leave some of these where they are. But yeah, I'm going to leave It's a Wonderful Life where it is, and I'm
All
going
right.
to move on the Waterfront. I mean, I like it, but
I mean, that's fair. Like, put it where your heart tells you.
and so here, like my eyes just landed on like A Streetcar Named Desire, and I'm trying to think, do I like it better or worse than that? And I say
As a
better.
as a Marlon Brando movie.
Yeah, like that's just why my eyes landed on that, because
Mm-hmm.
of another Marlon Brando movie. I would say, yeah, it's probably better. Yeah, so let's just put it. It's better than the Last Picture Show too. Yeah, put it up there. Put it above Ben-Hur, but below Toy Story.
Okay. Let's see. I moved everything down a little bit more. All right.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Um, I'm the exciting podcast and video content of moving stuff around on a spreadsheet that you can't see, that everyone else can't see. But yeah, so let's
So
see.
what I've done has I moved it
Uh,
down to 88. Yeah, it's
yeah,
or 87. Sorry.
it's going to shift actually a little bit more once I put everything
Well, on the
back.
Waterfront, we'll go to 87, I think.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, so I'm
everything's.
thinking, I'm still feeling like the original Toy Story is
It'll
better.
it'll
I
actually
moved
be
it.
86, but yeah.
Oh,
And then Wonderful Life actually shifts up to 19 because we
oh,
moved on the
because yeah, you
Waterfront
hadn't
out of the
deleted
way.
the other
Yeah.
cell. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to move It's a Wonderful Life down just a couple. Um, see, the two that I have very high on my list right now, that I'm considering a little bit, are Apocalypse Now and Shawshank Redemption, which I love both of those movies a lot. But do I really feel like they are at the absolute top of this list of everything? I'm not as sure. But Doctor Strangelove, I have no qualms about having that as high on the list as I do, because at times where I have been pressed to try to name my top 5 favorite movies, Doctor Strangelove is one of them. So I don't object to that. But It's a Wonderful Life, I think I'm going to move down actually between just a little bit between Shawshank Redemption and Apocalypse Now. So it's only going down a couple of spots.
Okay.
And then on the Waterfront, I'm also going to move down, um, let's see, a little further. I think I'm going to put it after King Kong, before Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Ooh, in the 30s.
Well,
Yeah.
it's still not that far down. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
good. That's a strong position.
Yeah. All right. So that leaves. Going to have. Oh, I just undid the move that I was trying to make. There we go. I moved It's a Wonderful Life twice is what I did. There we go. All right, so that puts It's a Wonderful Life at 21 instead of 20, and On the Waterfront at 32 instead of 19. All right.
Yeah.
So
All right.
there we have it for It's a Wonderful Life and On the Waterfront. Our next two movies that we're going to be talking about will be The General, which is the only Buster Keaton movie on the list. And at least according to what we've got on the spreadsheet now, neither of us have seen it. And
Nope.
I think actually that when we first started this podcast and we talked about like what is the movie that you haven't seen that you're sort of most excited to see, I think pretty sure I said The General. Just because I like Buster Keaton in principle, but I have not seen this one, so we'll see. So The General, and then number 17, The Graduate, the 1967 Dustin Hoffman movie that also features questions about investing in plastics to get rich. We didn't actually.
A huge fan of The Graduate.
Mm-hmm.
The Graduate, I can tell you right now without rewatching it, The Graduate's not moving.
All right, good. Well,
That is, I mean,
well, hey,
that
hey.
is when you mentioned earlier that the Doctor Strangelove is always in your top 5. The Graduate is always in my top 5.
Very cool. Well,
there are so many things about that movie from a film standpoint to a narrative standpoint that I think are just at the apex of like what we should be doing. So I cannot wait to talk about that.
Great.
It'll be fun to be paired with a movie that I haven't seen that I'll be seeing for the first time. So that should be a good discussion.
And of course, it's going to be a very different kind of movie to discuss because of course it's a silent film from, one of the classics of, like slapstick and physical comedy versus a movie about the angst and existential drama of growing up in the 60s and anytime.
Yes, and also doing some of the things that, like, I think Citizen Kane gets a lot of credit for, which is using new film technology to, like, tell the story and doing it in, like, an overly dramatic way that eventually became commonplace. I think The Graduate does a lot of that, too. Like,
okay, yeah, I don't know as much about that, so I'm excited to talk about that too.
So there's some cool stuff in there. So
cool.
Okay. Let's do it. Yeah, like next week, 2 weeks, whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will do it soon. So in the meantime, we're gonna find time to watch those movies. So all of you out there, watch good movies, and we'll be back soon.
See you later.